Yesterday, my daughter, who's a doctor at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx in New York, gave an interview during a press conference, and I was shocked to hear her say that every day she goes to work, she feels like going to slaughter, and that she and her colleagues are writing her will and testament because they're afraid they will not survive this pandemic as doctors and healthcare workers. They have about 500 corona patients, and I talked to her how she feels about people dying, how she deals with this emotionally, what the training is for doctors.
I'm in healthcare. I think obviously the emergency medicine healthcare workers and those doing the inpatient internal medicine services are all really risking a lot.
I also didn't know that she is actually calling the relatives if somebody is dying.
If there's a patient with COVID, who's the one attending to them every 60 minutes, giving them medications? So I think the nurses and other local staff who are in the hospital deserve a lot more credit than they've been given.
Nurses go out in public and they still have their smock, or maybe they look like they're a nurse and they're getting verbally abused for being out in public.
They have some protective equipment now. She has an N92 mask, she has a shield, she has a gown, but she has to use it apparently for a few days.
The media really focuses on nurses and physicians, and rightfully so. We should definitely be grateful for them during this time. What I haven't seen though is, a lot of kind of that same appreciation for a lot of other workers. Like you have the sanitary staff who is cleaning the hospitals, who probably make minimum wage at best. The cafeteria workers at the hospitals. These are people who are exposed to not only the patients, but also the patients' families who come and visit.
I'm really pleased to see that some of the supermarkets now have screens for their workers, just to give them a bit of extra protection. I think that's really important.
There are lots of non-healthcare workers who aren't getting any credit for the jobs they're doing, especially people who are delivering food and at the grocery store. The other day we went to Whole Foods and the employees were legitimately stressed. And it was obvious in the way they were talking to people and the looks in their faces. Grocery workers, people who are delivering food and kind of, these lower paying jobs, and they have no other alternative but to keep working, right? They can't stop working and keep getting paid because they're still open.
Prime Minister came out and said, only essential services are going to be available, and then he went on to describe essential services as anybody who has a job. So
I don't know whether new people are being hired or if the same workers are being called for these extended hours. So that does make me sort of pause and ponder whether there's any kind of abuse going on at the shops with the workers being asked to work overtime.
Both of my parents are in Miami, Florida. They both work in the restaurant business. They both work in pizza stores. And I really wish that these other, employees were acknowledged and had their companies provide protective equipment.
I hope that the frontline workers understand that we really appreciate the work that they are doing. Regardless of what their task is, they're also all at risk of being infected, and we really appreciate them.
They are really doing great work, and they are our heroes. They are like a celebrity for us now.
2 days ago, I went grocery shopping, and while I was in the line outside the shop, there was this man that went straight to the entrance of the shopping mall, and everybody got angry because they want him to attend the line. So they started screaming to the cash desker, and they asked, why is he going inside? And she turned around and she said, he works in the hospital. everybody just shut up.
You hear of medical staff getting coffees delivered to them, which is fabulous. Posties having little notices on letterbox thanking them for their work.
We just had our Easter celebrations. There was this very focus on praying for people who are working, so I felt really nearby those people.
We are here to respect them, to appreciate them once a week by clapping for them or by lighting up candles, like a torch, to respect them.
Each evening at 8 o'clock, we open our windows and applaud the first responders and the people working in the shops that are still open, all the medical personnel, all the people cleaning, and we applaud them every evening at 8 o'clock.
About a month ago, I'm standing in a classroom in Levanger, Norway, teaching an English class. And suddenly another teacher comes in, and then the principal comes in and says, we're shutting down the school. Apparently we became the epicenter of our town. There were a couple kids who had coronavirus, and they had been out partying and had contact with a lot of other kids. So school was shut, and then that was actually the lockdown of all of Norway, because everyone seemed to find out at the same time. And the country locked down and had an economic package out almost instantly. First they dealt with artists, musicians, getting them money because they don't have regular paychecks. And that made me feel oddly comfortable, like everyone was going to be taken care of.
I've lost my job. I'm part of the unemployed ranks now. And from what I understand, there are over 15, potentially 20 million of us.
The changes around employment happen and a lot of people lost their job. The first thing the government announced was that anyone who lost their job could go on benefits straight away and that they would get $3,000 a month.
We've gotten a couple of thousands from the government, which we're really thankful for. There are very strict rules as to how you can use the money, so we might even be forced to give some of it back.
Those who submitted their taxes and who got refunds received $1,200, $2,400 if they're joint with a spouse. I myself did not receive one yet.
People who get unemployed get 60% of their last wage, and mind you, people here make about a fifth to a tenth of what people make in America or Northern Europe.
You can't spend it on personal things like food or rent or anything.
The government is rolling out a plan that will offer everybody who is a working person 2 minimum salaries per month, which is around 2,000 reais, which today is about $450 for a month. And that's, if you are the sole breadwinner in your family, that's what you got to live on.
If you lose your job, they're gonna match your salary up to like 70 or 80% for like a year.
A new measure that's been introduced is a job keeper scheme, and this is where they now hand the money over to the employers who can keep on the employees, and they would be getting $3,000 per month. There's a big difference between being told you've been stood down or made redundant or you've lost your job to this is what we can pay you till things go back to normal.
We got the money easily. We filled out a form and it was on my boyfriend's account like a couple of days later. But there's other states where you have to fulfill ridiculous rules.
Anyone who can't pay the rent, that tenants can't actually evict them.
Childcare centres are still open and free childcare is now available, so those people who work in essential services can still go about their job and be reassured that their children are being cared for.
As you know, Sweden has taken a very different approach And I think if we make it out of it, our economy and the country's gonna, cope a lot better than other countries. However, I'm not saying it's the best way to do things. I think so, but you never know.
We've got this one friend who's really desperate and who has saved up some money to buy a new instrument. And now that money is actually standing in the way of getting anything.
The government in Australia is doing this employment package for small businesses, and it's great. For people like me, I've been working for the same company for about 5 years. But something that they didn't include in the funding for workers were what they call casual workers or part-timers who haven't been working for the same place for a year. So those people are kind of out of luck.
There's an awful lot of people who work in the so-called gig economy in Brazil. And there's an awful lot of people who work in what we call the gray economy. These are people who work off the table, off the books. There isn't much that will be done for them.
There's been, something like 1 million people that are these part-time casual workers who are kind of screwed. They aren't getting any help.
All of our weaknesses and errors as a country, our divisiveness is to the forefront. Let's hope the government does more.
The tricky thing is that everybody just hears, oh, they're getting help. That's great, awesome. So, they should be fine, right? And they're not fine because they aren't getting the help that is advertised. People feeling good about themselves and feeling good about the government, while at the same time the help that was promised isn't really there. That feels really, really unjust.
My daughter was interviewed, I think last Thursday briefly. She was on Don Lemon show on CNN. It just moved me so deeply and made me so proud of her, how well she spoke, not for her, but really for all the nurses, all the doctors, all the healthcare professionals, and also the inmate, the refugees, everybody who suffers because of their low economic and social status, and said that our healthcare and our well-being is only as good as we take care of the people who are not as fortunate as she is and we are.